Shabbat Shalom, everyone. It is my pleasure to welcome you to Temple Emeth and to our Shabbat Evening Service. And I welcome you here to the Rabbi Louis J. Siegel Sanctuary in Teaneck, New Jersey. If you're watching us on live stream this evening, I'd like to welcome you to our service. The Siddur that we use this evening is Mishkan Tefillah. And if you have a copy at home, now is the perfect time to bring Mishkan Tefillah to your screen or your device so that you can follow along with each and every song and prayer and page number of our service. Also, if you're watching us on live stream this evening, I hope you'll take a moment to post something in the chat or comment section of the live stream platform. It can be something as simple as your name or your location or Shabbat Shalom. And in doing so, you show others that you are watching, they might show you that they are watching, and we create bonds of virtual community in this way. If you are joining us here in the sanctuary, I'd like to say Shabbat Shalom to you. Your Siddur should be right in front of your seat, your copy of Mishkan Tefillah. So I invite you to find a copy of it. And as Cantor Tillum is continuing her sabbatical, it is my pleasure to welcome back to the Bima Temple member Stephen Friedman, who will be offering our cantorial music this evening. We are going to begin our service on page 120 of our Siddur, which is where we find the blessing for the lighting of the Shabbat candles. It is preceded by an opening reading, And for the honor of lighting our Shabbat candles, we call upon Nancy Scher.
Thank you. As these Shabbat candles give light to all who behold them, so may we, by our lives, give light to all who behold us. As their brightness reminds us of the generations of Israel who have kindled light, so may we, in our own day, be among those who kindle light. Thank you. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech ha'olam asher kiddushanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu lahadlik ner shel Shabbat.
Amen.
Amen.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kitshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu lehadlik ner shel Shabbat.
We continue now with our Kiddush for Erev Shabbat, which is found on page 123, preceded by an English reading. Please rise if you are able for the Kiddush. Okay, stand right in the middle. Good. And we're right here.
As evening falls, we give thanks for the blessings of the past week, for life and strength, for work and rest, for home, love, and community. As we enjoy this bounty, may we be inspired to bring goodness into the lives of others. We raise a cup of wine in gratitude for the miracle of creation and for the gift of this day of rest. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam borei peri hagafen.
Amen. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam borei peri hagafen. Amen. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kitshanu b'mitzvotav v'ratzavanu b'shabbat kodsho le'ava u'bratzon hinkilanu zikaron le'maaseh bereshit ki hu yom tekilah le'mitzra'e kodesh zeker le'tziat mitzrayim kivanu v'karta v'yotanu kidashta mikohanim v'shabbat kodsheka v'ahava u'ratzon inkaltanu Baruch atah Adonai mekadesh HaShabbat. Amen.
L'chaim. Please be seated. We turn now to page 142 in our Siddur. Page 142 is where we find our opening song. We now join together in singing Shalom Aleichem.
Shalom Aleichem, Malakei Hasharet, Malakei Elyon, Mi Melech Malkei Hamlakim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Boakem leShalom, Malakei Hashalom, Malakei Elyon, Mi Melech Malakei
turn now to page 143, where we find a passage from the book of Genesis, where our patriarch Jacob, for the first time, identifies a holy place, a place in which he has communicated with God and in which he can identify that God exists. We read together in English. And Jacob left Beersheba and set out for Haran. Coming upon a certain place, he passed the night there, for the sun was setting. Taking one of the stones of the place, he made it his headrest as he lay down in that place. He dreamed, and lo, a ladder was set on the ground, with its top reaching to heaven. And lo, angels of God going up and coming down on it. And lo, Adonai stood up above it and said, I, Adonai, am the God of your father Abraham and the God of Isaac. The land on which you are lying I will give to you and to your descendants. And your descendants shall be like the dust of the earth, and you shall spread out to the west and the east and the north and the south. Through you and your descendants all the families of the earth shall find blessing. And here I am with you. I will watch over you wherever you go, and I will bring you back to this soil. I will not let go of you as long as I have yet to do what I have promised you. Waking from his sleep, Jacob said, Truly Adonai is in this place, and I did not know it. He was awestruck and said, How awe-inspiring is this place. This is none other than the house of God, and this is the gate of heaven.
Yitkadav Yitkadash Shemei Rabbah Yamad Ivrak Yirtei V'Amlik Malkutei V'Kaye Konuv Yom Konuv Kaye Dekol Beit Yisrael Bagala Bagala Ubisman Kariv V'Meru Amen Yehei Shemei Rabbah Mevorak Leolam Ulam E'amaya Yitbarak Yitbarak V'yishtabak V'yitpar V'yiromam V'yitnaseh V'yithadar V'yithaleh V'yithalal Shemei Dekudashav V'yihu Leila Min Kol Birkata V'shirata Tush Bekata V'nekemata Damiran B'alma V'meru Amen.
Please rise if you are able for the Baruch Hu. Baruch Hu is found on page 146.
Baruch Hu et Adonai Hameborak. Baruch Adonai Hameborak Leolam Vayed.
Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, asher bidvaro ma'ariv aravim, v'chokhmah poteach she'arim, uvitfuna mishanei itim, umachalif et hazmanim, umisader et hakochavim b'mishmorotehem, barakia kirtsono. Borei yom v'layla, golel or mipnei choshech, v'choshech mipnei or, uma'avir yom umevi layla, umavdil ben yom uvein layla, Adonai tzavaot shemo. El chai v'kayam, tamid yimloch aleinu leolam va'ed. Baruch atah Adonai, hama'ariv aravim. We read together in the middle of 151. Wisdom and wonder, passion and instruction, story and symbol. All these things your Torah gives to us, and the more we devote ourselves to it, the more it grows and gives. What could be a truer token of your abiding love than this holiest of your works, and the living language that gives it form? Baruch atah Adonai, Ohev Amo Yisrael.
Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. Baruch Shem Kevod Malkuto Leolam Vayed.
Please be seated.
ואהבת את אדוני אלוהיך בכל לבבך ובכל נפשך ובכל מאודיך. והיו הדברים האלה אשר אנוכי מצווך היום על לבביך, ושינתם לבניך, ודיברת בם, ושבתך בביתך, ובלכתך בדרך, ובשוקתך וקומך, וקשרתם לעוד על ידיך, והיו לטוטפות בין עיניך, וכתבתם על מזוזות ביתך ובשעריך, למען תזכרו ועשיתם את כל מצוותי, והייתם קדושים אלוהיכם. אני אדוני אלוהיכם, אשר הוצאתי אתכם מארץ מצרים, להיות לכם לאלוהים. אני אדוני אלוהיכם, אדוני אלוהיכם emet.
We turn now to page 157. We read together in English at the top of the page. Standing on the parted shores of history, we still believe what we were taught before ever we stood at Sinai's foot, that wherever we go, it is eternally Egypt, that there is a better place, a promised land, that the winding way to that promise passes through the wilderness, that there is no way to get from here to there except by joining hands, marching together.
Mi kamoka ba'elim Adonai, mi kamoka nedar ba'kodesh, nora tehilot, osef ele, nora tehilot, osef ele, malkutecha ra'u banecha, okei ayam lifnei Moshe, zeli, zeli, anu ve'amru, Adonai imlok le'olam va'ed, Adonai imlok le'olam va'ed, Adonai imlok le'olam va'ed.
V'ne'emar ki fada Adonai et Yaakov, u'ga'alom yad chazak mimenu, Baruch atah Adonai ga'al Yisrael. We turn now to page 161 as we read together in English at the top of the page an interpretation of the Hashkivenu, the prayer that asks for God's special protection as night descends upon us. Let there be love and understanding among us. Let peace and friendship be our shelter from life's storms. Adonai, help us to walk with good companions, to live with hope in our hearts and eternity in our thoughts, that we may lie down in peace and rise up waiting to do your will. Baruch atah Adonai, hapores sukat shalom aleinu ve'al kol amo Yisrael ve'al Yerushalayim.
V'shamru b'nei Yisrael et ha-Shabbat, la'asot et ha-Shabbat, l'dorotam berit olam. V'shamru b'nei Yisrael et ha-Shabbat, la'asot et ha-Shabbat, l'dorotam berit olam. B'nei Ruvain, b'nei Yisrael, oti le'olam. V'shamru b'nei Yisrael et ha-Shabbat, la'asot et ha-Shabbat, l'dorotam berit olam. Ki sheshet yamim asa Adonai, et hashamayim ve'et haaretz. V'shamru b'nei Yisrael Ubayom hashvi'i Shabbat vayinafash, Shabbat vayinafash, Shabbat vayinafash. Vishamru b'nei Yisrael et ha-Shabbat, Asot et ha-Shabbat, v'dorotam berit olam.
We turn now to page 164 in the Siddur. Please rise if you are able as we continue now with the tefillah.
Adonai sifatai tiftach ufi yagi tehilatecha. Adonai, open up my lips that my mouth may declare your praise. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu, Elohei Avotenu, Imotenu, Elohei Abraham, Elohei Yitzchak, Elohei Yaakov, Elohei Sarah, Elohei Rivka, Elohei Raquel, Elohei Leah, Ha'el Hagadol Hagibor Menorah, Elyon, Gomel Chasadim Tovim, V'konei Hakol, V'zoker Chasdei Avot Be'imahot, Umevi Gula Lifnei V'nehem, Leman Shemo Be'ahava, Melech Ozer, U'Mashiach U'Magen, Baruch atah Adonai, Magen Avraham, Vezrat Sarah. Atah Gibor Leolam Adonai, Mikaye HaKol atah Rav Loshia, Mashiv HaRuach, Morid HaGashem. Mikakel Kaim Bekesed, Mikaye HaKol Berakamim Rabim, Somech Noflim V'Rofei Cholim, Umatir Asurim, Umekayem Emunato, Lishene Afar, Michamo Kabal Giverot, Umido Melach, Melech Memit, Umekaye, Umatzmiach Yeshua, Ne'aman Hatala Kayot HaKol, Baruch atah Adonai, Mekaye HaKol. Atah kadosh v'shimcha kadosh, ukdoshim v'kol yom heluka selah. Baruch atah Adonai, ha'el hakadosh.
Please be seated. Our next prayer is found on page 175. Ever-present one, may we, your people Israel, be worthy in our deeds and our prayer. Wherever we live, wherever we seek you, in this land, in Zion restored, in all lands, you are our God, whom alone we serve in reverence. Baruch atah Adonai, she'otcha levadacha b'yir'ah na'avod. We turn now to page 179, where we find a prayer for peace. We read together in English at the top of the page. Grant us peace, your most precious gift, O eternal source of peace, and give us the will to proclaim its message to all the peoples of the earth. Bless our country as a safeguard of peace, its advocate among the nations. May contentment reign within our borders, health and happiness within our homes. Strengthen the bonds of friendship and fellowship among all the inhabitants of every land. Plant virtue in every soul, and may the love of your name hallow every home and every heart. Praised are you, Eternal One, who blesses our people with peace. Baruch atah Adonai, hamivarech et amo Yisrael. Shalom. We take a moment now for Tefillat Halev, a moment to offer the prayer of our hearts. Inspirational readings for this time may be found on pages 180 and 181.
shalom bimromav. Uyase shalom aleinu. Ve'akol Yisrael. Vimeru, amen. Oh, say shalom bimromav. Say shalom aleinu, ve'akol Yisrael, v'meru, amen. Yaseh shalom, shalom aleinu, ve'akol Yisrael. Yaseh shalom, shalom aleinu 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 ve'akol Yisrael.
Our service continues now with our service for the reading of the Torah, Seder Kriyat Torah, which is found in the Siddur, beginning on page 363. Assemble the people, men, women, and children, and the strangers in your cities, to hear, to learn, to revere Adonai your God, to observe faithfully the words of this Torah, and that their children who do not yet know it hear, that they too may learn to revere Adonai your God. We continue in the middle of the next page. Please rise.
Su she'arim ra'shekem u'seu b'tkei olam ve'avo melech ha'kavod. Mihu ze melech ha'kavod Adonai Sevaot u'melech ha'kavod Selah.
Face the congregation. We're doing this. Right, there's good. In this scroll is the secret of our people's life from Sinai until now. Its teaching is love and justice, goodness and hope. Freedom is its gift to all who treasure it.
Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad, Echad Eloheinu, Gadol Adonenu, Kadosh Shemo, Gadlu Adonai Iti, Umeromema Shemo Yakdav. Lecha Adonai Hagedula, Hagevura, Yatiferet, Yanetzach Be'ahor. Ki kol b'shamayim u'ba'aretz, Ki kol b'shamayim u'ba'aretz. Lecha Adonai ha'mamlacha, ve'amid naseh lekol erosh.
Please be seated. I'm going to talk about the Torah portion first,
Okay.
so you can have a seat. You can study. Well, it seems like Simchat Torah was so long ago, at least in the world of rabbis, but it was just this past Sunday night and Monday, and so that means we have begun the reading of the Torah anew, and we are at Parshat Bereshit, the first Torah portion of the Torah. And there are two stories of creation in Parshat Bereshit. Chapter 1 is the one we're more familiar with God creating the world in 6 days, and on the seventh day God rests, and it is on the sixth day that human beings are created after everything else has been established, and the movement of the universe and plants and fish and animals and all those things. In the second story of creation, Genesis chapter 2, it's as if it's reversed. There's nothing when the human being is created. Rain has not yet begun to fall. No plant has begun to sprout. There's no one to work the land. The implication being that plants and rain are only necessary when there are people around to do the work of agriculture, but that hasn't happened yet at this point in Genesis chapter 2. And so I chose to read from this section for a couple of reasons. First of all, because it is less well known, but I think equally important in terms of Jewish history and Jewish theology. And second is that in this story, there are two words for creation. The one is the one I think we're more familiar with, which is Bet Resh Aleph. Bara, you're familiar with that three-letter Hebrew root when we say Borei Pri Hagafen, creator of the fruit of the vine. That kind of creation, when that word is used, it is almost exclusively, if not exclusively, used for God's unique creative power. After all, people might be able to plant and cultivate grapes, but people cannot create grapes. Borei Pri Hagafen. The second word, which is also in the section I'm going to read, and apropos of our topic tonight, is the Hebrew root of Yud Tzadi Resh. And this is another kind of creation, but the way the two words have developed, bara has sort of been maintained within the realm of God, and yatsar is something that people do. When I went to Jewish summer camp, Yitzirah was a time for artwork to be creative. And so this is the kind of creation that any one of us, if so inspired, can do. And since we have a museum opening tonight, which is not exactly artwork, but not exactly not artwork either, it is storytelling as artwork, I thought it would be nice to read a section that had both of these kinds of creation, the kind that we reserve for God's unique power, and the kind which human beings can use when our creative juices get flowing, when our creative spirit starts moving. We can express Yitzirah, and indeed we are going to celebrate Yitzirah in our museum this evening. So the honor of the Torah, or the honor of saying the Aliyah to the Torah this evening, goes to Ina and Michael Silverstein. Okay, so Ina, I know you're very focused on that, but you have to put your hand here where the Torah is going, you be your left hand, where the Torah is going to roll shut on me, and then I can't read it. So, let me find my spot. Wait a second. Okay, I found my spot, so you're at the top there.
Baruch Hu Adonai Hambarach.
Baruch Adonai Hambarach Le'olam Va'ed. Repeat that.
Baruch Adonai Hambarach Le'olam Va'ed. Baruch Atah Adonai Eloheinu Melech Haolam. Asher bar bachanu Mikol Hamim. Banahu lanu et Torato. Baruch Atah Adonai Notein HaTorah.
Amen. Amen. Hele toldot hashamayim v'haaretz behibaram b'yom asot Adonai Elohim eretz v'shamayim v'chol siach hasadeh terem yihyeh va'aretz v'chol esev hasadeh terem yitzmach Ki Elohim tir Adonai Elohim al haaretz ve'adam ayin la'avor et ha'adama ve'ed ya'alem min haaretz ve'hishka et kol pnei ha'adama vayitzer Adonai Elohim et ha'adam Afar min ha'adama, vayipach be'apav nishmat chaim, vayhi adam lenefesh chaya.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech olam, asher natalanu Torah emet, v'keya alanu natar b'techenu, Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah.
Amen. Right behind me. We continue now with a prayer for healing, which is found in your Siddur. Which is found in your Siddur on page 371. If you are thinking of someone in need of healing and you're watching us on live stream, I invite you to enter the name of your loved one in the chat or comment section of the live stream platform. And if you are here in the sanctuary and you're thinking of someone in need of healing, I invite you to share the name of your loved one out loud or in your heart at this time. The members of our congregation in need of healing and their loved ones will be shown on your screen as we join now on page 371 in singing the Mishaberach.
Blessing, and let us say Amen. Misheberak imotenu mekor habraka lavotenu. Bless those in need of healing with refuah shlema, the renewal of body, the renewal of spirit, and let us say Amen.
We continue now with the lifting and dressing of the Torah, found at the bottom, page 370. Please rise if you are able for Hagba and Galila. Okay, Michael. So you're going to put one hand here and you can sort of scoop up.
Oh no, not yet. Torah asher sham Moshe lifnei bnei Yisrael al pi Adonai b'yad Moshe. Alai, 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 ya la la la, ya la 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 la, ya la 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 la. La 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 la, ya la 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 la, ya
standing as we turn to page 374. Yehalelu et Shem Adonai, ki niskav shemo levado.
Odo el eretz v'shamayim ve'yarem keren le'amo tehila lekol chasidav livnei Yisrael am kerovo. Hallelujah, hallelujah.
Ki lekach tov natati lachem, torati al ta'azovu.
Etz kayim hi lema kazikim ba betom keha meushar derakeha darkei noam vekol netivoteha shalom Hashibenu Adonai Elecha v'nashuva Kadesh, Kadesh Yamenu Kadesh Yamenu Kekedem.
Please be seated. You're all done? Yes, you go. This evening, we have the pleasure to hear from your fellow Temple members about our new exhibit in our experiential museum, known as Ancestry at Emeth. Really the theme that ties many, if not all, of the exhibits together is immigration and family stories. And you all know Barbara Balkin, but most of you know her primarily from her very visible role as our temple photographer. But Barbara wears a second hat here at the temple, which is that she is the chair of our museum, and she coordinates the various exhibits, including the one that we are celebrating this evening. And so it is my pleasure at this time to call upon Barbara Balkin to give an overview of our new exhibit and to call upon three of the exhibitors who are going to speak a little bit about their work and their family at this service.
Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom.
Where would this country be without immigrants? The story I grew up with was that my grandparents escaped the pogroms in Eastern Europe and came here. I have no photos, no documents, no proof. What I do have is a very fond memory of going to the Lower East Side to visit my maternal grandmother, who spoke Yiddish with my mother, and who made the best latkes and challah. I try to pass this down, this tradition, to my grandchildren. They've already helped me make latkes. The Ancestry at Emeth project started 3 years ago, with the first exhibit taking place November 2019. It's an ongoing project, and we hope to continue it with more participation. Tonight is the official opening of the second exhibit, Immigration and Family Stories. The displays have been put together using priceless documents and photos, which I preserved by scanning and printing them, and with stories provided by the following temple members: Stuart May, Florette Koffler, Sam Groner, Eva Sandroff, Nancy Scher, Gail Turner, and Carlene Fleischman. Every family has a story, a unique story. You can read the stories presented in the museum exhibit, and you will get to hear some of them now. The speakers tonight are Nancy Scher, Sam Groner, and Florette Rechnitz-Koffler. If you're interested in participating in a future exhibit, please contact me at dkrm505@yahoo.com. Nancy.
Oops. That will help. That will help putting it the right way. Shabbat Shalom. For a number of years, I have been a volunteer with two programs. The first is Footsteps, an organization that helps individuals who were formerly a part of the Hasidic community. The other is Riverside School, an immersive English program for adult immigrants to this country. For the Footsteppers, I mostly teach literacy, American history, and civics for those whose education was predominantly in Yiddish, with virtually nothing secular. It is as if some of these individuals immigrated from another country, and they yearn to assimilate. At Riverside, I work with groups of helping to improve conversational English. Weekly topics run the gamut, including our country, our government, newly tried American foods, and common American idioms. Both groups of people dream to become a part of the American culture, and for many Riverside students, also to be able to live in safety. Both my father's and mother's families mostly came from Latvia. Hayes was a part of my paternal great-grandparents and their young family's immigration story. They entered this country through the port in Philadelphia, I believe because it was before Ellis Island was completed. Also, I was once told by one of my father's aunts that Letterman was not the original last name prior to coming here. My mother's mother went from Latvia to Liverpool and then on to America, the latter on the Lusitania. This journey was taken alone as a teen, a fact that I cannot fathom. Others in her family came on a different ship. My mother's father's family had a relative living in England who somehow had the means to help relatives leave Latvia. Apparently, some went to England, some to Australia, and others to America. Although it has been more than a century since my first ancestors came to these shores, I am fully aware of some similarities between those I volunteer with and those of my family. Primarily, there were overwhelming challenges in not knowing English and being of very limited means. I am certain that assimilation and all that the term implies must have been their goal. For example, when my mother entered kindergarten, she was a predominantly Yiddish speaker. As her knowledge of English improved, her family learned more, with English eventually replacing Yiddish in their home. Over time, the lifestyles of my immigrant grandparents and first-generation American parents left the old country behind, unless, of course, my parents were sharing a racy joke that was in Yiddish, so my brother and I could not understand. Sometimes when I work with some of the extremely insulated former Yiddish speakers from Footsteps or Riverside students, I am made aware of how difficult it is to become acclimated to our American culture. With thanks to Barbara Balkin for spearheading this ancestry project, I've thought more about the great challenges of my great-grandparents and what they encountered. The 21st century immigrants have the benefit of technology to keep in touch with those that they left behind. And I learn about their traditions through our conversations. Obviously, that was not the case with my family. I wonder what has been lost or forgotten due to our assimilation. I wish there was a time machine to transport me to them and learn more. Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom. Immigration and family history. Interesting topic. Very reflective of my family's history. It's a theme that's goes back several generations. I won't go back that far, but I can tell you that this idea started in 1937 when my grandparents decided to send their younger son, my father, to Palestine. Why? Because he started coming home from school every day with bloody shirts because he got into fights with the bullies who were brainwashed about this Nazi stuff and, Jews and all that stuff. So we have to recall emigration as well as immigration. So he emigrated to Palestine in 1937. He was only 16 years old. He went alone, but he was supposed to be watched by his mother's brother, uncle, who was an attorney. But it ended up, he was in the Technion in Haifa, and within 2 years, World War II started. So he stayed in Palestine and fought for the British during the war, and then he helped in the War of Independence. My father was a metalworking specialist, and he helped make some of the weaponry in clandestine places, and it helped eventually win independence. And he did well, but never reached the kind of economic level that his background was. His family was a fairly successful business in a clothing shop. So 20 years later, after struggling through various Arab campaigns and things like that, by 1956, he had it, and he felt it was time to leave. So that was the emigration in 1957. And by that time, he had 2 kids, and this was the beginning of my chapter of the travels and immigration. So of all places, we ended up going to Germany, the place that I had grown up hating because what they did, we never really were told all the details, but it was just a bad place for Jews. That's what we learned when I was a little guy. So that's where we ended up in Germany, and then it was a very hard transition for me between ages 10 and 12, not knowing my identity. Was I Israeli? Am I going to be a German? What's going on? And within 2 years, I learned that we're coming to America. So here I am, again, being plucked out from Germany and coming to America. So this was in 1959. So I personally now have lived through dislocation and having to adapt and actually struggling with my identity. At some point, I became an American, but there was a long period there in my personal history. When my father died, I set out to research and recount his life story. The project is highly personal, though far from unique. There are literally 6 million stories emanated from the smoke that rose from the crematoria and the killing fields that dotted European countryside from 1939 to 45. And though undisputed historical facts run through most accounts of the Holocaust, my intent in writing this book, it's called Loss and Legacy, was to really tell my father's story, the story of a stubborn man whose dogged pursuit to correct the injustice visited upon him by anti-Semitism has indelibly shaped my own perspective. His parents stayed behind when they sent him to Palestine and perished. Now, having been spared the camps, he never referred to himself as a survivor. Yet, like the millions directly or indirectly affected by the terrible deeds of the Nazi regime, there is no denying the obvious. I have in my book a quote, mere words laid the groundwork for what was to become the most heinous example of mankind's inhumanity. Now, based on his life and his moving around and fleeing and losing his parents, it was inevitable that my father's firsthand experience and outlook on family and fate, religion, politics, and the human condition would come to define me as well. And with that realization, I reluctantly accepted my identity, the one I'd struggled with, as a member of the second generation, along with a commitment to the duty of remembrance of the youth. I am hardly alone in this sharing this obligation. Now, with the passing of that generation of survivors and firsthand eyewitnesses, the duty has passed to the post-war baby boomers like me. We, their children, cannot credibly testify to what happened in those dark years, yet we have seen the impact of the Holocaust on our survivor parents, despite their reluctance to openly address their inner regrets, pain, anger, and deep sense of loss. And it quickly became evident that few, as I was working on this book, few of my generation had truly explored the impact of the social convulsions visited upon our parents in their youth. Dislocation, educational pursuit disrupted by war, and the loss of parents to guide their lives. So in my book, I tried to fill this void through the prism of my personal experience. I owe it to my American-born children and grandchildren to shed light on their heritage and on my father's lifelong pursuit to reclaim a stolen past, which he succeeded in getting, I relate in my book, more than 50 years after the family's property was taken, he received it back. It's all in my book, Loss and Legacy. And those of us who are here, those of you who are here would like to purchase the book. There are coupons in the social hall so that you can get one and help contribute to the temple and museum. Thank you, Barbara, for pulling this together.
Does this work? Shabbat Shalom. And hello to my fellow ancestry seekers. First of all, I wish to thank Barbara, whose energy, talent, focus, ingenuity, and persistence made this project and so many others possible. We are all products of our place, time, and family. Like you all, I think of my heritage as special, probably unique, and feel blessed to own it. I don't believe that heritage should be lost or forgotten,
And as a former political refugee, having felt and lived dislocation and rootlessness, then obtaining the American citizenship, I really wonder if the welcome that I felt in the US in 1967 would be possible today. I once talked here about my journey as a Jew. The photos and documents displayed in the panels at the museum reinforce some of that story. I would like to talk briefly about some aspect that could not appear on those panels. Yes, on my mother's side, the ancestry is not at all unusual. Her parents came to Bucharest from the northern part of the country, Moldavia. Her father, a builder, constructed several homes on his property so that his 6 children would dwell in them, surrounding his house, as he was a patriarch. Only one did. He was able to pay, at the turn of the 20th century, for the passage of several nephews and nieces to America. If I have some relatives around named Zilberman or Silberman, I wouldn't know who they are. The fascinating parts of my ancestry come from my father's side. I know some details from him, from his 2 older brothers that I was close to growing up, and from actual research that my Israeli cousin Heda Rechnitz and I did on our own. My father's mother, Marie, was born in Egypt, in Alexandria. The family, originally from Poland, had been on an extensive trip through the Middle East. Among other relatives, she had a cousin, Sami Ginsberg, who grew up and remained in Turkey and became the personal dentist and occasional physician of Mustafa Kemal Ataturk, and occasionally also acted as a diplomat. That last role was significant in 1933, when at a conference for Jewish scientists in Paris, he met Albert Einstein, whom he encouraged to write to Ataturk and his ministers to obtain safe harbor for about 40 German and Austrian scientists and scholars, as it was clear that their fate and work were becoming problematic. In all, more than 100 such future refugees ended up in Turkey, that way helping also to enhance and develop Turkey's universities and other places of learning. I have here, and I will show you later if you want to look at them, the cover of a recent book based on Sami Ginsberg's accomplishments. He was called The Dentist of the Palace, and the book is by a Jewish-Turkish historian, actually based at the Sorbonne, and the book is essentially about his exploits, and he's called there the Master Dentist of the Seraglio and the Republic. Anyway, you can't see it here, but I will bring them to the museum later on. All right. So the book is actually, the book about his life is available on Amazon, but it's in Turkish, and that's a language I don't know. Anyway, by the way, as an aside, I feel very strongly about the Armenian genocide of 1915. So I did some research and know that certainly Ataturk came to leadership later, much later than that horrific event. Therefore, he was not stained by that appalling crime. And so I assume that my relative, my grandmother's cousin, also had no part in that. My grandmother Marie, back in Europe, met her husband Karl Rechnitz in the town of Brăila at the mouth of the Danube, and therefore not far from the port of Constanța, which is a former Thomis recalled in the verses of the Latin poet Ovid. Karl wasn't born in Romania either, but in the Austro-Hungarian Empire. And his surname, Rechnitz, therefore mine too, comes from the town by that name, situated southeast of Vienna in Burgenland, just across the border from Hungary and Slovakia. Karl had been trained as a pharmacist, but left that work to become a grain merchant, and that's why we find him not far from the Black Sea. Rechnitz today is a small tourist town with many fruit tree orchards and winter sports, a place that I would certainly like to visit while I still can. Here comes the difficult part. A few years ago, my cousin Hedda and I discovered that toward the end of the Second World War, in March of 1945, a terrible crime against about 180 Hungarian Jews was committed in Rechnitz. The town had a famous castle known as Rohonc in Hungarian. As the Soviet army was advancing west, a labor camp in a neighboring Hungarian town was, quote unquote, liberated. Some prisoners were shot, some died from their injuries or from hunger, and some were allowed to march out toward the Austrian side. The castle was the property of a wealthy noblewoman, Margit Batyany. Actually, that was her married name. She belonged to the renowned Thyssen-Bornemisza family, the great art collectors. She was an avowed Nazi and hosted many feasts at the castle. The night when the former prisoners entered Rechnitz, she and a bunch of friends, also Nazi sympathizers or active Nazis, decided to have a little more fun while they could, because they knew the end was going to be near. And they ordered the former inmates, all Jews, to be gathered at an abandoned train station, had them locked up, and set on fire. After the war, Margit Batyany escaped with some family and settled comfortably in Switzerland. A few years ago, in 2017, a book was published in English by this woman's grandnephew, Sasha Batyany. It's called A Crime in the Family. He's a Swiss journalist, still young, in his 40s, who set out to investigate the crime committed in Rechnitz. He traveled widely from Russia to Argentina to talk to some survivors, discovered his own grandmother's memoirs lamenting the crimes committed against town Jews who had been her friends, found other witnesses with their own accounts. This work is quite riveting. So this is a book that I actually prize because it says something about events that were pretty horrible, but they connect with me somehow. Of course, that crime was not quite on the scale of Babi Yar, but still. And there are more such instances that are being discovered slowly. There is a book by appeared in 2000, I believe, by a sociologist from Princeton, Jan Gross, who published a book called Neighbors, The Destruction of the Jewish Community in Jedwabne in Poland. By the way, the graves of the murdered Jews were not discovered, but in March of 2019, a memorial service took place to honor those victims. I can show you these photographs, and the book later on. Okay, thank you.
Thank you to Nancy Scher, to Sam Groner, and to Florette Koffler for sharing a little bit of your family's story so that we can appreciate how immigration, not only the story of America, but the story of 3 of our Temple members' families as well. Thank you to Barbara Balkin, not only for arranging all of this, but for baking some delicious goodies for our Oneg Shabbat as well. We still have to conclude the service, but as soon as the service is concluded, you can enjoy some of the goodies at the Oneg, and definitely stop by our museum where all of these stories are on display. We continue now with the Aleinu, which is found in your Siddur on page 586 at the bottom of the page. Please rise if you're able for the Aleinu.
Aleinu l'shabeach ladon hakol, v'teikil al yotzer breshit, shelo asanu gidoye haratzot, velo samanu k'mishpachot hadama, shelo sam kelkenu kahem, begor aleinu kekol hamonam, v'anachnu korim u'mishtakavim u'modim livnei melech malkei hamlakim hakadosh baruch hu. Ne'emar v'yanai lemelech hakol haaretz bayom hahu yeh Adonai echad u'shemo echad.
You may be seated. We turn now to page 596 in the Siddur for a reading to introduce the mourner's Kaddish. When cherished ties are broken and the chain of love is shattered, only trust and the strength of faith can lighten the heaviness of the heart. At times, the pain of separation seems more than we can bear, but if we dwell too long on our loss, we embitter our hearts and harm ourselves and those about us. The psalmist said that in his affliction he learned the law of God, and in truth, grief is a great teacher when it sends us back to serve and bless the living. We learn how to counsel and comfort those who, like ourselves, are bowed with sorrow. We learn when to keep silent in their presence and when a word will assure them of our love and concern. Thus, even when they are gone, the departed are with us, moving us to live as, in their higher moments, they themselves wish to live. We remember them now. They live in our hearts. They are an abiding blessing. This Shabbat, we remember those for whom we're in the Shloshim, 30-day period of mourning. Alice Rubin, mother of Jamie Rubin. Gary Janae, brother of Bruce Janae and brother-in-law of Barbara Finkelstein. Michael Goodman, a member of Temple Emeth and father of Daniel Foyer. Alan Gutfleisch, a member of Temple Emeth and husband of Phyllis Gutfleisch. Sandy Klein, a member of Temple Emeth. And Larry Jacobson, father of Karen Zisk and grandfather of Lindsay Skiana. We remember as well those whose yard sites occurred this week. Ruthie Adler, Rebecca Auerbach, Samuel Berkowitz, Joseph Brody, Ray Duke, Samuel Eisner, Isidore Foyer, Manny Gelbstein, Harriet Gottlieb, Patricia Hopman, Sam Hopman, Julian Hyman, William Jonas, Dorothy Penn Kaplan, Honora Kaplan, Leon Klempner, Selma Klotz Cohan, Juliet Lasky, Freda Lazarus, Nathan Lehman, Morris Leibowitz, Jesse Leon, Seward Levy, Phyllis Litwin, Sam Luftig, Aaron Malton, Edna Miller, Jack Nadell, Ida Rolfe, Sheldon Rose, Saul Rubin, Ada Mae Stein, Jill Sugarman, Erwin Santo, Bert Talkoff, Rose Tarshis, and Harold Teitelbaum. We remember the names of 6 of the 6 million who perished in the Holocaust. Saul Elias of Greece, age 9, Leonid Elentuch of the Soviet Union, age 11, Ephraim Elstein of Poland, age 16, Batya Emmanuel of the Netherlands, age 6, Shalom Emmanuel of the Netherlands, age 10, and Bela Engelman of Hungary, age 12. We remember them all. We take them into our hearts with our own as we turn now to page 598. Please rise if you are able for the mourner's Kaddish. Yitkadal v'yitkadash shemei Rabbah, be'alma divra chirutei v'amlich malchutei, v'chayechon uvyamechon v'chayei d'chol beit Yisrael, ba'agala uv'yizman kariv v'imru. Amen. Yehei shmei Rabbah mivorach le'olam u'almei almaya, Yitzbarach v'yishtabach v'yitzpa'ar v'yitzromam v'yitznaseh, v'yitzhadar v'yitzaleh v'yitzhalal shemei d'kudsha b'rechu. Le'ela min kol birchata v'shirata, tushbechata v'nechemata, da'amiran be'elma v'imru. Amen. Yehei shlama Rabbah min shemaya, v'chayim aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael, v'imru. Amen. Oseh shalom b'mromav, hu ya'aseh shalom, aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael, v'imru. Amen. May the source of peace and peace to all who mourn, and comfort to all who are bereaved, and let us say, Amen. Please be seated. It is my pleasure this time to call upon Alan Winters, a member of our Board of Trustees, to offer Shabbat greetings and announcements.
Shabbat Shalom, everyone. On behalf of the Board of Trustees, it's my pleasure to welcome you to our Shabbat Evening Service. Thank you, Barbara Balkin, Sam Grana, Florette Koffler, and Nancy Scher for the hard work you put into our new museum exhibit and for speaking about it this evening. Join us this Sunday at noon for Biachad breakfast. We'll watch the film 50 Children, the rescue mission of Mr. and Mrs. Krauss about the heroic rescue of Jewish children from Nazi Germany. The film is presented in conjunction with our One Book, One Synagogue program with the Book of Lost Names by Kristen Harmel. The Viewpoints Committee presents its first program of the new year on Sunday, October 30th at 2:30 p.m. in the Social Hall. Join them to see Demona Twist, a documentary about the settlement of North African Jews in Israel in the 1950s. The film will be followed by a discussion and refreshments. The 17th Annual Teaneck International Film Festival takes place next month, November 13th to the 20th. Screenings will be held at Teaneck Cinemas here at Temple Emeth and virtually. For more information, visit teaneckfilmfestival.org. Any time is a great time to join our adult choir. There's no audition, you just have to want to make music. Contact Carol Shansky for more information. Finally, the Paul S. Lazar Caring Committee is looking for volunteers. Please pick up and complete the volunteer card, which is available in the Temple hallway and also in the September bulletin to let us know how you can help. Thank you to this evening's volunteers in the live stream control room. Michael and Gail Goldberg are at the controls this evening. Shabbat Shalom.
Thank you, Alan. I want to take a moment and thank Stephen Friedman for leading our Chazanut this evening. Thank you, and Yasher Koach to Stephen, who did it, of course, with the help and accompaniment of Tom Mustachio. And he's not quite finished because we have a closing song. The closing song is found on page 625. 625 says it's Don Olam, but if you look all the way at the very last line of page 625, it says Adonai Li Velo Ira. That is the first line and the repeating line of our closing song. We also get to the whole final stanza. Please join with us as together we sing Adonai Li.
Adonai li velo ira. Adonai li velo ira.
We have reached the conclusion of our service. If you've been watching us on live stream, perhaps you'd like to post in the chat or comment section a yasher koach to any one of our speakers, or to Stephen Friedman for leading us in the Chazanut, or even to Alan Winters. He did a bang-up job on those beam announcements. Or you can simply post in the chat or comment section the same words that we in the sanctuary will share with one another. As we conclude our worship, we turn to one another and say, Shabbat Shalom.